Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Today, I have with me Kelcee Sparks, who is with Elite Ops Support. She has a team of people that support designers and other industries with operational support, VA support, and she also provides operation support for me personally. And we've been working together for almost 3 years, and she's going to ask me some questions today so that we can share a little bit more of the questions that you all have been sending in and have asked. So enjoy the podcast. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Kelcee, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Michele, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm excited to chat with you today. And I know that you have been compiling some of the questions that either I get asked or that you get asked about me or that we see coming in different channels. And before we do that, I know you've been on the podcast a couple of different times and we've worked together to answer other questions that will come in. But tell everybody that's listening just a little bit about Elite Ops Support and what you guys do, and then we can jump into the questions.
Yeah, perfect. So Elite is a full service agency. We provide everything from operations to social media management and marketing for small and medium-sized businesses. We focus a lot on working with the interior design industry, but we also support clients in other industry with administrative and operational needs.
Awesome. So Kelcee, you and I have been together for, 3 years, which is so hard to believe. It's been a hot minute, right? And we've seen the industry change. We've seen things grow. We've even seen my program shift a bit here and there throughout time. So you have, again, compiled some questions that people have asked you. What do you think is, I'll ask you a question before you start unloading on me. What do you think one of the biggest questions that you get in Elite Ops is right now from people that are looking first and foremost for help and assistance instead of doing a full-time hire? What is the first question, the biggest question you get?
So we have a lot of people that are right now budget conscious. So they want to understand how somebody who's not in the office with them can fully integrate into their business in a part-time scenario and really make an impact. So the biggest, really, with that being said, the biggest question that people ask us is, how does it work? How do we work with you? How do we work with your team members? What do we get from you? And how can it work for us? How can something like this save us money? How can it make an impact for our business? And how can someone who's not sitting next to me really be a part of our team?
I know we have done multiple podcasts on that, but I do think that's a burning question that we all have, right? We're always looking for what's in it for me. Every single person is looking at it that way, and rightly so. Like when we read a contract, what's in it for me? When we're looking at delegating, what's in it for me? I know you shared one time in one of our coaching calls that if you delegate 10 minutes a day for a year, you get a 40-hour break. I mean, it's crazy. So sometimes what's in it for me is just I need a 40-hour break at the end of the year as it's all pulled together because somebody else did 10 minutes of the day for me. Awesome. So I'm going to throw it over to you and let you start asking questions based on the things that you've seen.
Perfect. Okay. So the most common question, Michele, that people ask about you is they want to get to know you. They know you're a well-established brand that supported hundreds and hundreds of business owners. But let's take it back for a minute. How did you move from being a workroom yourself to a coaching business owner, and why did you make that change? What impact did you feel like you could make on the home interiors industry?
So I think it was episode maybe around episode 170 is going to be my guess. where I did like, here's the Scarlet Thread origin story. So for all the nitty gritty details, you can go listen to that one, but I'm going to give you kind of like the broad brush stroke. Okay. So I started a drapery workroom back in 2000 after having had a 10-year corporate career. And I did that for a very long time. In 2009, I bought into a management partnership where we ran, that's a lot of where we ran the Custom Home Furnishings Academy, which was a 9,000 square foot facility in Charlotte, North Carolina. I produced a magazine every other month for about 3.5, 4 years. And we taught educational classes on how to build businesses for workrooms, installers, staging, some light design, those kinds of things. And then we also taught the hard skills of how to do those things. And in 2012, I started having some severe health issues. Let me back up. I'd been teaching, in addition to doing a magazine every month or every other month, I had also been teaching classes every month and hosting webinars and moving around the United States and teaching, not physically moving, but traveling around the United States, teaching classes. A lot of them were, well, almost all of them were either financial based or how to start a business. That's what I was doing. And so I really enjoyed that work and had taught hundreds of people just how to get control of their finances, how to understand what was happening. So fast forward a little bit, in 2012, I started having I started noticing some big shifts in my health, probably late 2011, but I think I just pushed it away because I didn't want anything to really be wrong. And I ended up going to the doctor in February of 2012. And when I did, I found out that I had some extreme health situations. I was actually in DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, and my body was threatening to go into a coma. And I also had lack of blood flow in my right arm. And so I was in danger of losing my arm as well. So my right arm is my dominant arm. And so, when you are told kind of all within 1 week, you are, we've got to keep you out of a coma and we're trying to keep your arm, that will rock your world. And it rocked my world. It rocked the world of my husband and my kids. So I took that information. I had to start insulin therapy immediately. I had to change my diet. I had lost so much weight. I was wearing, not that anybody cares, but just to give you an idea, I was wearing a size 00. And so that it was extremely unhealthy for me, right? And very tiny. And it was continuing to decline. The one great thing about it was I could eat a brownie and lose 2 pounds by the next day. Everybody has to know at some point that's not normal. I just kind of ignored it because that was a great benefit to eating a brownie. So within 1 month of me being diagnosed, I went in and had surgery to build a new artery system in my neck and in my shoulder to give blood flow to my right arm. I had to change my diet. I had to change all of my activities. I had to go on permanent insulin therapy, and I'd already been hospitalized. And in the middle of that, I realized that it was going to be very difficult for me to lift heavy bolts of fabric. It was difficult for me to travel. I had to limit my travel. I couldn't pick up a suitcase. Like all the things that I had done in my life, everything just screeched for a while. And I also went back to the partnership and said, I need to get out. I need to sell. And everybody agreed that we would all look for a way to sell it together. And we did, and we found a buyer. So we were able to sell it. And then I was at home thinking, now what am I going to do? Because I had planned at some point in my life after I sold to come back and just build a bigger workroom. And then I couldn't do that. So I've sold the company, one company. The other company that I have, I can't perform in the same way anymore. What am I going to do? So I really went on a long journey and calling people and trying to find out what am I going to do now? Because I've got a lot of information in my brain. I have a lot of skill set, but the physicality I cannot do. And it was during that time, so interesting, during that time that a former client of mine from the educational space emailed me, and she said, Michele, I really need a coach who can, or a business owner who can walk beside me and help me do these things. And you've already taught me so much. My business has already transformed so much. Can you be that person? And so my thought was, I said to her, you know what, and let me investigate, because I didn't want to just, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but there's so many people that can just call themselves coach. That just, hey, I'm a coach. I've done something one time. Let me call myself a coach. Or let me call myself a designer because I designed something one time. Or here, I am a professional photographer because I took a picture one time. And I didn't want to be that. That's super important to me. So I went back and did about 6 months worth of training on coaching practices, best methods, understanding worldviews, all those kinds of things, so that I could come in prepared and not shooting from the hip, or just being able to express one way to do something, right? Mm-hmm. So I did that. And then in 2013, started my coaching practice. So that was kind of the way that it shifted. The impact that I thought I could bring, I don't even know that I recognize some of the impact that I was able to have at that point in time. I don't think sometimes when we're starting, we really recognize the gravity of what we're doing, but I knew that I could impact good business practices. I knew that I could impact how to know and understand your financials, because I'd been teaching that already since 2007. So we're like 6 years in at that point. I've been on stages. I've been speaking about it. I knew that if I could do nothing else, I knew that I could help people know and understand their numbers and their money and make decisions based on that empirical data.
And so I have had the opportunity over the past few years to watch you do that with tons of business owners, hundreds and hundreds, and you do it so well. So one of the other questions that we often get about you is, what's something that this journey, clearly you've been on a journey with health and business and the different things you've done. What's one thing that you've learned through this journey of business ownership and transition that you think everybody should know?
That's a big question. That's a big ask. I would say the thing that I think everybody should know is that it's really important to allow yourself to grow and evolve. So the business that I started with in 2000 was not the business that I had in 2009 when I bought into a second company. It wasn't the business I had in 2012 when I sold. And it wasn't the business in 2013 when I started coaching and consulting. And that is certainly not the business that I had in 2018 when I started the podcast. And it's not the business that I have today in 2023. So I think we have so much, Kelcee, everybody has so much that we bring to our work. And giving ourselves the ability to grow and to evolve in that work, whether it's deepening a skill set or widening a skill set, I think is amazing. The fact that we can be in this home furnishings industry and we can go in so many different directions. We can go in the direction of education. We can go in the direction of mentorship. We can go in the direction of going deep with the product or with a vendor, right? In support of that, or just bigger homes or different types of homes or commercial. It's just so varied for us. And so not putting ourselves in the box and not limiting ourselves on how our skill sets translate. But I think what has been most important to me in that journey, as I've looked back, because now having built Matrique Solutions software, that's going all the way back 30 years to when I started working in corporate in 1989. I mean, that's a long time. And every bit of it fits together to form this puzzle, right? But I look back and I realize it's because of the foundation. So I think that, yes, we can build, we can grow. Don't pigeonhole yourself, but also understand that we all have strengths, weaknesses, values. And every time I've built a business or a type of business or pivoted in my business, it has been built on my deep value statements, my why, who I am as a person. So that never changes. but the way that it is expressed in my work has changed. I'm already wondering and thinking about after I retire, which I got a while to go. But I've already started thinking what I would like for it to look like then. And honestly, I want to go work in women's shelters, and I want to go work with those young moms or those women who have escaped some really rough situations. And I want to go sit with them, and I want to help them reinvent in whatever way I can, or just provide support, or just hold their hand and give them a hug. Heck, I'll watch their kids for them. But that's already, I mean, and that still fits in alignment with the why that I have today. So I guess all that to say, know your own why, know your own values, and to give yourself space to evolve and to grow in your life and in your business.
I love that. I think it's so easy sometimes to feel lost. And if you're always remembering that why you started, why you're doing it, I think it's easier to kind of find your way even in those transition periods. So,
Kelcee, and it's because you also work in the program, that every 6 months we have our clients go back and look at that foundation. And it's so interesting. I'll have people that'll say, I've been in business 10 years. I know my foundation, or I've done it for 30 years. But when we really sit back and look at it with a fresh set of eyes, it's not because I'm anticipating that foundation changing sometimes. It's really more to become acquainted with what it is that we're doing, where we have made those commitments, what is seriously important to us. And then are we giving it full expression in our work, in our processes? Like you work with process development a lot. Well, if I've got a value of being on time or of time management, and that is super important to me, my process better show that. Or I'm working at odds with my own value system. And so just always being reminded of it. It's not I did it one time and I never have to do it again, right? And it's easy to push it to the side and think it's not as important as something that's like right in your face, but it really is the driver for everything.
Absolutely. And that actually transitions us well into our next question, because it's all about refocusing, right? And prioritizing. Something that has come up, I think, over the last probably year and a half often is a work-life balance. Life is busy. Time seems to be getting shorter. How are we supposed to keep up with it all? What people often ask is what you do to maintain a work-life balance. How do you manage your time and your team to make sure that everybody is able to prioritize what's most important?
So I'll first tell you, I don't think there's really a balance. I just don't. I mean, and I say it because in my mind, I think of balance as like scales, right? That are 100% equal on every side. It's elusive to me. It just is. But what I work a little bit more at is being centered. And what I mean by that is I can find my center and still be tipped to one side or another, right? But I'm still upright and centered, finding kind of that core as we're moving. So I think about it more that way. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. But what I would say is the things that I have learned, because look, I have done it all wrong. Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. I've had those moments where I thought I suck as a mom and a wife, but I'm an awesome business owner, or I suck as a business owner because I'm being a mom and a wife. And I didn't know how to balance, right? That word again, I didn't know how to do it all. And I am just going to say, I am not a believer that we can do it all at the same time. I just don't believe that we can. And I think it is a lie that we've been fed, that for some reason we should be able to do it all, because men aren't asked to do it all. They're not asked to take care of a home and take care of kids and work full time. We never ask that of them. It's not even a level of expectation. But somehow for women, we have internalized that I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, like that we could do the whole thing. And we can do it all. I just don't think we can do it all at once or without help. Right. So I'm a believer in getting help. So, we've done things. We've had people do yard work for us. If I'm thinking about my home, I've had my home cleaned. I've had meals prepped, all kinds of things like that. Where can we get help in the home? I get help in work. I delegate. I have a lot of different people that work for both of my companies and work with me and support me. I don't do anything by myself. The second thing that I would tell you is I've learned not to schedule myself to capacity. You and I talk about that quite often. I don't want to schedule you to capacity, because if either of us get scheduled to capacity, the minute that phone call rings from a client that we already have who is in need of something, and in my elite program, I am on their speed dial. So they have the ability to text me, call me, email me during business hours, whenever they need me. And so with that level of support of saying, I am pretty much CFO, whatever, by your side all the time, I have to create space for those calls to come in. I have to create that. And so I have to build white space into my calendar. So that's really important to me, is not to schedule to capacity. I'll give you an example too. When I was raising the boys, and I would always try to get that last thing in. Oh, if I could just load the dishwasher. Oh, if I could just vacuum this rug real quick so it's nice and clean when I come home. It would take me to the edge. So I had scheduled of when we needed to leave. And then we would go to leave and the boys couldn't find their shoes or something was going on. I lose my cool because they don't have their shoes. We're in the car. I tell the funny story. We went to the pumpkin patch one time and my 2-year-old had no shoes. I'm like, where are your shoes? Why are 3 years old? Why did you not have your shoes? Where did they go? So I started learning I needed to give more time so that with ease, I could do the next thing. And I've been trying to bring that into what I do right now. There's a great book that I've talked about multiple times called Who's in Your Room? And it's talking about who you spend time with, who you give access to your thought process. And he talks about ease and disease, and disease is lack of ease. And it just so rocked my world when I really broke down the word disease, that I don't want to create a business or a life of that. So I schedule fun. I schedule vacations. I try to schedule up to about 85% capacity so that I leave space for all things to break, all things to go wrong, somebody to call, something good. I mean, even those things. So that's important. Some of the things that I use to do all that too, Kelcee, are things like project management tools. I have a merged calendar. My family does with me. We have a merged calendar. So I know what Matrique is doing. I know what Scarlet Thread is doing. I know the birthdays in my family and life. I know when our family's going on vacation or when we're dog sitting for one of our sons. Like, we've got all these things on a calendar, and that helps me manage as well. Oh, one other thing. The doctor told us when we took our 2-year-old, our first 2-year-old, he said, parents, here's what I'm going to tell you. You're told that your child needs to eat a healthy diet. He said, he's not going to eat a fully healthy diet all day, every day. So I want you to look at it over the time frame, like over a week, over 2 weeks. It may be he goes through a phase where he's developing his palate and he only eats broccoli one day. The next day, he may only eat chicken. The next day, he may only eat bananas, whatever it is. But over a week or over 2 weeks, was it a balanced diet? So when we go back and you're asking me about balance, and I said I'm more centered, there are times when my work demands more heavily of me. There are times where my life demands more heavily of me. And being centered allows me to move in each of those directions while still having a solid core, right? But to move in that direction. We have a wedding coming up in our family in the next month. That is going to demand more of me personally. I have an event in September for all of my clients, right? We do a great big 2-day workshop. That's going to demand more of me on the business side. So learning how to kind of move back and forth between those without fully requiring an equal balance, that's where I think that word can be deceptive and then always make us feel like we're lacking.
Yeah, so sometimes it does feel like a no-win battle. And I think that that's what a lot of people have said to us over the past little bit is balance doesn't feel possible. So I love how you explained that 2-week thing with small kids. I also understand some days are better than others, right? And
right.
Work and everything else. So let me ask you this. You've obviously got a lot going on. You've got a family, you've got a business. Are there systems, are there platforms that you're using? Are there processes and people that you're using that have really been a game changer for you, that have made finding this centeredness, this form of balance for you easier, and what things have been helpful that you would recommend to really any business owner?
Yeah. So, I do think that doing things wrong is a good educator. I heard one time that when we do it that way, it's like we learned on a field trip or we had to do the experiment. We didn't just learn from the book, right? So I will tell you, I've done a lot of experience in my life. And a couple of things that I would say are top of mind for me. One would be write down processes. So creating SOPs, I've shared that on the podcast over and over, brought a lot of different people in to talk about it. Because the more information that is in my head, I can't give it to somebody else to help me out. Like it's a barrier. They don't know what's in my head. You've said that to me, Michele. I don't know what's in your brain. You have to tell me. You've got to write it down. And so writing those SOPs, my staff has changed over in the last 3 to 5 years in a couple of different positions. And every time we've been able to hand over SOPs, tweak them for the new person, hand over SOPs, but there was at least a starting point of something. So I think that is one of the most important. Outside of that, once I have these SOPs, really thinking, what can I take off my plate? What is the best use of my time? We talked about that even again yesterday in our Designers Inner Circle call. We talked about that queen bee role, right, from Clockwork. What is the best use of your time and how do I protect that? What can I hand off? I'm all about delegating and not dumping, but how can I push the work to a different level in my company where it can be done well and support the brand? It doesn't always have to be the owner, right? I delegate in my company, you delegate in your company, because no one person can do it all. So creating SOPs, which allows you the ability to delegate, is super important. As far as other tools, I am a big user of calendars. So I'm a Google Calendar gal, and that's the one that supports me right now. I'm really I love automation as much as possible. There's so many different platforms. We use Keep internally just because we had been using it a long time, but there's so many others that can be used. I use Calendly. There's Calendly, Acuity. You use, I think, which one do you use? Motion?
Yeah.
I use Motion. I just bought that one, so I'm starting to investigate that one. Some of my clients use Hive, ClickUp, Asana, Trello, Basecamp, Monday. There are a lot of them out there. I personally use Asana just because that's where I started and I like it, but it doesn't mean that Motion might not show up for me later. We use all kinds of software. We use Metrique, we use QuickBooks. We have people that use Harvest and Clockify. So any tool that can be used that can do a couple of things, that can streamline a process, that can reduce the amount of time and work that a human has to do, and that can change your hiring processes, I'm all for that.
Absolutely. Perfect. So we've been talking about work and life, excuse me, and those types of things. But now I want to ask you some opinions. People often come to us wondering, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And we haven't shared a lot of what's in Michele's brain. The first one is about coaching. It's becoming a huge industry. People are hearing it everywhere for tons of different things. There's a ton of options out there. Yeah. What do you think is important? Why do you think it's important to have a coach? What do you think is important about coaching? Why do you think it's becoming such a big thing? And how do you decide what the best option is for you?
That's a good question. So it's interesting. When I started coaching back in 2013, there weren't very many. I want to say in I guess it was 2013, I started looking for other coaches to coach me immediately. And I could not find the right coach to coach me to be a coach. I did a coaching certification, so I did all of that, but I really wanted somebody who was doing what I was doing. It took me 2 years to find the person that I was willing to have coach me, because a couple things. Number one, I think it's really important. Look at every sport that we have, there are coaches, and there are different types of coaches, right? So if we were to take softball, baseball, for example. You've got your overall coach, you've got your line coach, you've got your first base coach, you've got the coach that hangs out over there between third base and home plate. You got your outfielder. There are coaches everywhere because we see the game differently. We've talked about it before. If you were to think about even on a football field, you've got people up in the press box that are shouting down information because they see right from that overhead aerial view what the people on the field don't see from a line of sight view. And we only know what we know. Every person in the world only knows what they know. And there is the older you get, the more you recognize there is more that we need to know. I believe coaching, if you get the right coach, and we can talk about that, I believe coaching fast tracks. If it's done well, it fast tracks your success or it fast tracks your learning because they are showing you what you don't see. They are creating an awareness that you don't have. They are inviting you to see things differently. Because if we don't get that from somewhere, whether it is a formalized coaching or a mentorship or whatever it is, if we don't get that, we keep doing the same thing over and over with different expectations. And they call that insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over, but expecting different results. That's what happens. So our thinking has to change for our output, our outcomes to change. And so there are times that I try to self-teach. There are times that I try to self-direct or read or listen to a podcast and implement changes. We all do that. And that's good. And that's helpful. But there are times where I don't know how to implement certain things, or I don't know what to do in that case. And so I have hired overall coaches. I've hired mental coaches. I've hired marketing coaches. I've hired coaches for all kinds of different pieces and parts of my operationally, different pieces and parts of my business to fast track me to get what I want, what I need, and how I need it. So that's why I think it's important. I do think, like anything, it's easy. A lot of things aren't regulated. And so it's easy to just call yourself. But I could call myself 5'8" and blonde, but it doesn't make it true. But I do think we have to be careful because people have overused all things. They've overused the term designer. They've overused the term coach. So we have to really ask ourselves, what is a coach? There is a difference between coaching and mentorship and advising. And mentoring is usually when you're teaching somebody, sharing with somebody how to do exactly what you've done. That's a mentor. A coach is somebody who's trying to help you be better at what you're doing and helping you look more widely at things, right? So it's not necessarily only one way of doing things. An advisor kind of pops in and really advises about a certain situation or within a more closed setting of what you need. And then a consultant comes in and actually helps you try to do it. It's a more actively doing. And so really looking at, sometimes those terms get intermingled, just like we see people mix up margin and markup all the time, but they get intermingled. So I think it's really about knowing what you need, knowing where you want to go, and then interviewing coaches. There are different coaches with different styles, right? And it doesn't mean they're bad. I worked with a lot of different coaches. I know I have supported a lot of people who have worked with a lot of other coaches in our industry, and then they come to me. Many of them leave me and go to them because they offer something that I don't, or in a different way, or they have a different need. So if you're looking for a coach, I say, look for somebody who has already done and has a body of work and has a track record, right? And that has people who can tell you what it's like. Talk to them, interview them, find out if what it is they have to offer is in alignment with where you want to go with your business and what your needs are at that given time. And then look at building that relationship. Did I answer everything you asked me?
I think it does. Yeah, I think that's a really good perspective from somebody inside the industry, because I think, like you said, coaching is still relatively new. So I think there's a lot of us still out here that are wondering why, wondering how. So I think you covered all of that really well.
I will say this too, just about coaching in general. It is, as much as it can be frustrating when everybody calls themselves one, just like all the other things, I do love the idea that it allows in the industry that people want to help and share. And the idea that I'm willing to share, because I can also remember the day where everybody held every industry secret so tight to the chest that nobody shared anything. So that is a beautiful outcome of sharing. And I am excited. And I think there's room for all people, right? I don't think that we need to narrow it down. I think there's room for everybody. But just like we would want photographers or other business owners, interior designers to have really great business practices, we just need to make sure that we're holding people accountable for really good business practices.
Absolutely. Agreed. So I'm going to wrap up, Michele, with two questions that are honestly probably the most common questions that come in that people would love to hear from you about. So the first one, you've supported tons of business owners. We've talked about that a couple of times already. But I'm sure there's a common thread to lots of them, right? Is there one piece of advice that you've given to probably most, if not all, of your coaching clients that you would be willing to share right now with this audience?
Yeah, I think it is, if you are building a business, let's build a business that you love, not just one that you think will be lucrative, because the money will come, right? If you build it well and you build it right, and it's also what other people need. But I see people sometimes forcing a business model into their business because they heard it on a podcast, or because they read it in some book, or because somebody else said they did it. And in their mind, they had FOMO, that fear of missing out. And they thought that they had to take that and do it themselves. And so I guess I'm just a big proponent of use your own skills, talents, gifts, abilities, that God has blessed you with. Use those, do what you love. There is a way, I believe, for each person in this home furnishings industry to create a business. There's enough that we don't love in what we have to do just to run the business. I would never want the main thrust of what I'm doing to be something I don't like and don't enjoy. So that solid foundation that we kind of started with at the beginning, I think that's imperative. Know who you are, know what you love to do, know where your deal breakers are, know what you won't do, and then just build a business that you love, and then get help doing it.
I love that advice. Like you said earlier, we're spending so much time doing it. I do think it's very important that we enjoy it. And finally, I'm just going to ask, your business has changed. You've told the story, the 10-year story, the 15-year story. But even now, your business is changing. It's evolving to meet people where they are. Where can people find out more about you? Where would you send people to learn about Scarlet Thread, and how can they connect with you to start building that relationship?
Yeah. So first, if people are looking just to manage their finances, I would say matriquesolutions.com, and you can find us at Matrique Solutions on Facebook and on Instagram. And then if you're looking to build your business, then you can find me online. I'm hanging out at, so weird. I'm not used to being the one who's asked this question. So we're hanging out on Instagram at Scarlet Thread ATL. We are also on LinkedIn under Michele Williams, under Scarlet Thread, and under Matrique Solutions. We do put out newsletters and tidbits and suggestions there. You can also find me online at scarletthreadconsulting.com. And I would just say, if anybody, couple of things, well, let me go back, a couple of things on scarletthreadconsulting.com. And it is this: you can go up under resources. We have some free resources, so you can start to get to know what I think and feel and how I can help you by looking at those resources. We have the podcast that is out there, so you can listen to it. We have blogs that we have written, so you can go out and check those out. And then we also have a really cool resource under the downloads on coaching through the podcast. So if you just want to get started, we have an entire walk through the podcast where you can listen to it. We tell you the things to do, number 1, number 2, number 3. And so I think that is really a cool resource to have. And then lastly, you can go to the discovery form and fill that out and sign up for a 1-hour discovery call with me, where we can find out what the challenge is in your business and if we can support you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of your feedback. And I guess I would like to ask people, from your business perspective, keep sending questions. Michelle would love, I know Michelle would love for you guys to get to know her even better. So keep sending them in and she will keep answering them.
Yeah, this was actually very fun. I was a little nervous about it, but it's fun. If people even want to send in business questions, we can do continue to send them in. We'll answer them. The majority of the podcasts that we are putting out are because people have asked questions, and either we answer them in my solo podcast or we go find somebody who can talk about it. So if there are topics and ideas that people want to share, I'd love to hear them. And thank you for being such a great interviewer, Kelcee. I appreciate that. And as the rest of you are listening, I just want to invite you to continue listening to Profit is a Choice. Let us know if you have any questions. And as always, choose to be profitable, because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.